Hey everyone. For this video, just before I say anything, I'm gonna preface this with, I hope you guys watch my other video. I know my face is really red, I just had a shower, so that's why my face is so red, I just had a shower. So if you guys haven't seen my last video, you should go watch that, because that's like a really important topic. Not really important topic, but a really important event that I was talking about. I hope you guys watch that, because that's very important, and it's a really sad thing that I talked about on the past video. But I want to drive this video to something a little bit different, or a lot different. So, as some of you may know, as I've mentioned, I'm in high school, grade 11, and in my social class, there's a discussion and an assignment on whether or not you thought that Canada should have one singular identity, or if it should maintain its multiculturalism and have multiple interpretations of an identity and multiple identities depending on what group of people you're referring to, group of Canadians or Canadian people living in Canada. I just wanted to talk about my opinion on it because this is something very interesting, and I can look at it from a social and historical standpoint, but also a philosophical standpoint. So I'll be giving you guys my historical, personal, and philosophical opinion about where I stand on this. Do I think Canada should have one individual identity, or it should be broad and diverse? I definitely think it should be diverse. Because when you really think about it, what they mean by individual identity is everyone sharing the same identity and the same loyalties, the same aspects of nationalism, so the same trust, loyalties, and belief and faith in something and trust in something. But here's the thing, Canada is extremely diverse. Like, there is so much culture in Canada, and it doesn't really debunk the belief in a single identity, but it's a really firm argument against it, because there's so much in Canada, so much diversity that you can get out of Canada, because we have people of all different, we people of a bunch of different ethnicities and cultures and religions, or some people that aren't religious, or agnostic, depending on who you're talking about. But there are so many different people here in Canada. There's 40 million people in Canada currently. And even at the time where Canada wasn't even Canada yet, back when it was a colony during the American Revolution, there was 4 million people at first. Back when Canada was in its colony days, before the American Revolution, and before it was established as a nation and country as it is now. So back then it was literally 10% of the amount of people that we had. Our population, Canada's population, was 10% of where it is now. It was 4 million back then. Now it's 40 million. So it's it's way, way larger. There's another another 40 million people added on. Crazy amount. That would be 10 times more. So it's 10 times larger now than it was centuries ago, back in the 1700s during the American Revolution. Because Alberta wasn't brought into the area it is and called a province until 1805. But before then, we had the late 1700s and the American Revolution, and Canada going from a colony to a country and to actually being called a nation in terms of trust, loyalty, belief, faith, and like government structure. That's when it was called a nation after the revolution. Anyways, so I do definitely believe that Canada, pardon me, Canada is defined by its diversity. Canada's diversity is what makes it a nation, because it's what makes it like what Canada is, because the possibility of having diverse culture and belief and faith and viewpoints and different perspectives and worldviews far outweighs any possibility of just having one singular identity, because that would stifle all of the culture and all of the rich perspectives that we have here in Canada. Because Canada, on top of it being a resource rich country, is also culture rich. It's rich in religion, it's rich in ethnic culture, it's rich in ethnic diversity, because we have people of all different, of so many different ethnicities in Canada. Like, there's 40 million people, and there's a percentage of people that are of one ethnicity, but there's people of a bunch of different ethnicities, is what I'm saying. It's diverse. So Canada's not always been so diversified. Like, back when it was a colony, it was honestly mostly white people in Canada before it was even called Canada. Back when it was an American, or rather British colony, because of course our head of state is the British, the British and England monarchy, and the crown of England, of course, the king, is our head of state. And we also had a king back when the colony was made into Canada. We had our king of Britain and England back then. So yeah, it stems from British monarchy and British government. Where am I going with this? So Canada's so diverse that I can't get behind the idea of it just being one identity, because then you would have so much contending loyalties. So contending loyalties, is definition is literally what it sounds like: conflict of loyalty. So for a random example, real life example, you're like, there's an argument between like two of your really close friends, and you have to like choose which side you're gonna agree with if you're gonna pick sides. If you're not the negotiator of the group, then if you ever have to choose, there's going to be contending loyalties between your loyalty to another person and your loyalty to another person. And there's also contending loyalties between family and friends as well. So just having one singular identity for Canada would create so much contention of loyalty, so much contention and conflict of loyalties. And honestly, it would like puncture like society for Canada, because the diversity is what defines Canada in the first place. Because there's so much culture here, and the history of what built all that culture really strengthens the idea that Canada would not be where it is without all the diversity. Now, my opinion on it is, well, I agree with everything I've just talked about. This is my standpoint. Like, this is what I typed up. when I was writing about it. Sorry guys, I know the lighting's like fluctuating. Yeah, it'll be fine though. Let's be bright. I'm just gonna increase the brightness. That should be better. Yeah, that's better. So that's where I stand on it. What else do I want to say? Philosophical. Oh yeah, for a philosophical standpoint, there's individualism, and there's multi-loyalty. So from a philosophical standpoint, having Canada as its own identity, one identity, is individualistic, and it limits the scope of what Canada can be in terms of nationalism. Because nationalism, by definition, is loyalty and trust in something, like, for example, a government leader. So if you were to say that you are trusting and loyal to whoever's leading the government of wherever you are, of course that doesn't apply everywhere. Like, of course there's the failed states that don't have any governments, or that one-side governments that they fell. So it wouldn't be the same for failed states, but for states that are still under a government, from a philosophical standpoint, it would be individualistic to have one identity, because it would limit how you can express your perspective. It's like the theist and atheist debates, where both sides have like opinions to like defend and affirm their beliefs on both sides, and then there's also discussions between theists and agnostic people. And just as a clarification, agnostic people are not atheists. It is not the same thing. So if any of you don't know what agnostic means, you can just Google it. But also, yeah, it's like the theist and atheist debates, because both sides have good reasons to believe what they believe, and also there's idea that there's a mutual understanding of that's what they believe in, and swaying them is kind of trying to make them divert from their beliefs, which is just inherently controlling in a sense. Of course, unless it's like someone's being converted to another culture or religion, another religion, that's a different discussion. But Canada's diversity is what makes it what it is. So no, I don't think that Canada should ever have one identity. And at this point, it's been too long and there's too much diversity to even consider that anyways, because there is so much culture and so many different perspectives. So at this point, it just doesn't make sense to me to look at one identity as a viable option, because it just isn't. In order to do that, you would have to make it that there's one group of people that agree on the exact same beliefs and faiths and have correlating views. And that's just that you would have to remove like millions of people from Canada in order to do that. You would have to isolate the people that would believe in the individual identity, and then you would have to send everyone else that would have a different perspective from the majority, or what you would consider the majority, you would have to split them all up. And that just doesn't make sense. Because as it is, there's already so many people in Canada. Like I said, there's 40 million people here. And it just wouldn't make sense to try to push most of, like, wouldn't make sense to push more than half of those people. Much more than half, actually. Much more than half of those people away from Canada. So I think where we are now is like the best possible stance to take, and to be diversified rather than individualism. Because Canada's diversity defines what it is to be a nation in terms of Canada. And most of the people that say I'm proud of being Canadian, they're not only proud of where they are, but they're proud of how diverse it is. They're proud of how varied everything is in Canada. Because there's a lot of culture, and there's religion, and there's culture, and all of this. And it makes so much more sense to look at someone's diverse perspective and opinion and look at someone's single identity view, and it makes sense to gravitate more toward the person that has more diverse culture, because most Canadians can relate to that more, because a lot of us are proud of the culture that we have, and that unites people. Because also having one single identity for Canada would create so much, like I said before, so much contending loyalties, to the point that you would have a very small amount of people that actually wanted one single identity, and you would have so many people that disagree. Because when it comes to these kinds of things, there's always going to be people that disagree, and people that will push for their beliefs, which is totally fine. Everyone's belief is their own belief. So it would just create so much conflict, and the whole reason why we made reasonable accommodation for diverse culture was so that we could avoid conflicting loyalties as much as possible. And it's worked for the most part, because Canada is one of the most rich trading partners on the entire planet. Like, a lot of people trade because of how resource rich it is. But also, it's so rich in culture that it allows us to do that. If it was just one identity, then we would be so limited to a tiny amount of people that just believed in one identity above all others. And that tiny amount of people trading with other countries that have massive diverse cultures like Canada, it just would not make sense. It would be so overwhelmingly unbalanced. That would be insane. Not insane, but it would be illogical and really unrealistic, in my opinion. And that would create so much conflict, and it would cut ties with Canada and other countries and other places and other nations and other provinces. Like, we have ties to areas like Quebec, which of course isn't under the same Canadian government, which is why they have their own political parties separate from NDP and UCP and Liberal and Conservative. But Quebec has their own party because they're in a different government. They have their own individual government. And they're also diverse. Another thing is language. Because, just taking Quebec as an example, most Quebecers speak French. within Quebec. And a lot of people from Quebec, a lot of Quebecers, will only really speak English when within Canada. Like the leader of the Quebec Party, Mr. Blanchet, he did say in the leaders' debate that he tends not to speak English when he's in Montreal. I mean, he would usually be speaking in French, because most Quebecers are French Canadian, or Francophones. We have a lot of Francophone people. There's also Anglophones, but there's also a lot of Francophones, including Quebecers. And most of them are Francophones. Most Quebecers are Francophones and are fluent in English and French, and may even be more fluent in French than their English, depending on their education, their language education. So just using that as an example, Canada is like our government, our people are the same thing. Like, our language is just one of many aspects that make us diverse. Because in Canada, we have people speaking multiple different languages. Like, we have people speaking English, we have people speaking Arabic, we have people speaking French, we have people speaking Spanish. I've met a couple of people that can speak German fluently. And even if they can't speak it fluently, I've heard some people speak like multiple terms and even sentences in German. I just have to ask them what their definition is, because I know a couple German words, but not really much. So I'd have to ask them, oh, what's that word mean? Like, okay, oh, it means this. Nice. So, language is just one of the many things that makes Canada as diverse as it is. And creating one individual identity is going to limit communication so much, because there's so many different people that know more than just one language. Same with religion. Like, if we were to have one identity, what would that mean for religion? That would mean that everybody would have to be brought under one religion. So that would be converting everybody to whatever religion would be considered the majority. But that doesn't make sense either, because there are a lot of people that subscribe to different religions. So that wouldn't work either. Same with culture and ethnic relationships and ethnic connections. If we were to have one identity, no one would really be able to have a common ground on ethnic beliefs and ethnic faith. What do I mean? Well, I mean, like, connection to, like, mainly background and where you come from. It's less religion and more, like, culture-based, because religion and culture are not the same thing. Like, you can be extremely cultural and not be religious, and it can also be the other way around. But yeah, ethnic belief is another thing, like, belief in background, and, like, where you come from, and who you are, and what makes you you, from an ethnic standpoint. So that also wouldn't make any sense if you had Canada as one identity, because you're going to have so many people that aren't of the same ethnic loyalties and the same ethnic trusts and ethnic beliefs. So that wouldn't make sense either. So I definitely think that Canada's diversity is what makes it so prevalent, what makes its nationalism so prevalent, is its diversity. Because diversifying an entire country is going to way increase the chance of you having so much diversity that you can learn about different traditions and different holidays and different beliefs, different practices. because I looked over a percentage comparison recently, actually just today, and it was 29% of people 29% of people wanted Canada to be of one identity. The other 35% wanted Canada to be diverse and have multiculturalism and to be as diverse as it is. Now, I know that 29 and 35 doesn't add up to 100, but that's because there's always going to be that small percentage that either don't vote or, like, yeah, there's always going to be the percentage that don't vote. Because there could be people that are, like, don't think that their vote is going to have significance because they think it's, oh, I'm one person. And I was talking about this today, like, there's going to be people that are, like, they downplay the impact that their choice has when it comes to a vote. Because those percentages were from a referendum, which is a legal vote. It's like a vote, but it's not voting on a leader, it's voting on a decision. And it's whatever the overwhelming majority is, the government has to legally do that. Meaning if you had a overwhelming majority of 65% of people that believe that yes, Canada should have multiculturalism and shouldn't be limited to one identity, then if that's the overwhelming majority, then that's what they have to do. That's what they would have to do legally. That's what a referendum is. After it happens, there's no getting around it. Like, there's no changing it when a referendum is happening. There's no changing it. It's just how the referendum works. Yeah, which is actually really interesting. I'd never heard that word until like a week ago, and my social teacher talked about it. I was like, oh, so that's what it is. It's like a vote, but it's like legal rather than political, which is what a lot of votes are. Like the election voters. It's a political decision. But for this, it's a what's the word? It's a federal decision. That's the word, federal government. Or just a big, overarching government that's making decisions for the tiers below it. So yeah. So referendums are interesting. So yeah, I do think that Canada should have multiculturalism and shouldn't be limited to one identity. Because there's just so much diversity to the point that I wouldn't be able to argue it being one identity. Because there's just so much diversity that unites people, that unites Canadians and people living in Canada. Whether you're born in Canada or moved to Canada, there's so much diversity bringing people together. And individualism is going to stifle that. It would stifle that. So the diversity of Canada is what makes Canada, Canada. It's what makes us like who we are. So that's pretty much it. I will put out more videos soon. And I'll see you guys in the next one.